My name's Bruce Edgerton. I work with MRA Consulting, and we've been working with Snowy Monaro on a new waste strategy, which we've titled The Tipping Point, A Time to Transform Waste. I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country. Snowy Monaro Regional Council and MRA Consulting acknowledge the traditional owners of this country, the Narragaow, the Walgaloo, and the Northern Ngunnawal people, and we recognise their continued connection to the land, waters and culture. We pay our respect to their elders, past, present and emerging. So today I'm going to give a 15-minute presentation. You're more than welcome just to read that online and not follow through on the slides, but I'm also happy to take you through it and possibly provide a little bit more detail. So you should be able to see there an outline of what we'll be talking about, and I'll get right into it. So why does waste management matter? Well, the traditional reason that we've been concerned, we spend so much time and energy focusing on waste, is about protecting human health, prevention of disease and disease transmitters like flies, rats, cockroaches, and the like. At least since the 1970s, we've also been concerned about environmental protection. So that's ensuring we manage groundwater from landfills. It's about preventing tip fires and the emissions associated with that. And we've got a more sophisticated understanding, concern around heavy metals, toxic metals and pathogens. So controlling such wastes, making sure that we meet those first two objectives of human health and environmental protection. And emergency response capacity is a subset of that. So we know, and we're particularly aware in Snowy Monaro, the risk and the reality of fires and floods. And when those happen, we need to be able to clean up afterwards to ensure human health and environmental protection. The way we manage waste is a real issue for public amenity on your streets, odour, dust, visual impact and noise, and around the landfill or the waste facilities themselves. And then at least since the 90s, we've understood that waste management is critical to the sustainability of our society. So we're looking to have a circular economy that provides sustainable local jobs and where we reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and potentially we can even sequester carbon through the way we make composts out of organics and put them into the soil. So what's the role of government in all of this? Well, firstly, waste management is defined as an essential service under New South Wales legislation. And as such, it should be accessible, it needs to be safe, and it needs to be affordable. And when we're delivering these essential services, we're looking to do it in a cost-effective way. This is ratepayers' money, it's your money, and we're looking to spend that money as efficiently as possible. It's any money we spend on waste services is money we're not spending on something else, whether that's reducing your rates or giving you better libraries or roads. Governments are certainly essential to the provision of waste services, and Australia's a federation, so it's got 3 levels of government. And certainly traditionally, local governments have been the key players with regards to waste management. So they're responsible for providing those services, your curbside services and the like. And they'll either do that in-house with their own staff, or for bigger councils, and certainly in more recent times, that's often outsourced to contractors who are still managed by the local government and paid by the local government, but it's not actually local government staff doing the work on the ground. Again, from a traditional perspective, the regulation has come at the state or territory government level. So that's environmental legislation, more recently specific waste legislation, and of course planning and the like. And then the Australian government is responsible for the import of products and product standards within the countries, and that leads to the waste that eventually turns up, the form of that waste and how it's been put together and what materials might be in it. And in very recent times, only since 2000 or so, the national government has started putting in these national product stewardship schemes. They now exist for oil and e-waste recycling. And under these schemes, the company that makes the waste has to take some responsibility for its end-of-life recycling. So that's been quite of a game changer. So why do we need a new waste strategy? Well, we have a new council, or at least since 2016. And so it wants to synthesise its existing strategies and have a consistent and fair framework for all of its ratepayers and those historic member councils. And we're looking to realise potential efficiencies between the councils. Certainly since those previous strategies came out, there's been a lot of changes. Possibly the biggest of that has been the China sword, which prevents the export of Australian recyclables to China, which is where most of our plastic was going, and a fair bit of other products, including paper and cardboard. And then the Commonwealth has actually banned the export of a whole range of wastes, including tyres. These bans will come in over the next few years, and glass. And so that's really changed the market in which we're trying to do waste management and trying to sell recyclables. And in Snowy Monaro's case, that means recycling now costs twice what it costs to landfill waste. So that's another consideration we need to take on board. At the New South Wales government level, the big change is a new waste strategy that they are consulting on at the moment. And so local governments need to have a strategy that's consistent with that and reflects that. So that's very timely that we're updating this to coincide with that. And a couple of years ago, you may have noticed the return and earn scheme, or the container deposit scheme, turned up, which lets you take beverage containers, beer bottles, water bottles, etc., and you get 10 cents back. And that's massively changed the value of beverage containers in the waste system. And that creates new opportunities for businesses, communities, sports organisations to make money. So in light of that, we're looking at how Snowy Monaro operates its services and how we could take advantage of that. So just a little bit of background. Snowy Monaro formed in May 2016 from Bombala, Cooma Monaro and Snowy River. It's some 15,000 square kilometres with 20,000 people living in some 12,000 houses, mostly standalone houses, but also a percentage of multi-unit dwellings, apartments and the like. So that gives you guys around 2.5 people per household and about 1.4 people per kilometre squared. And that's incredibly low population density. It's lower than Mongolia or Namibia. It's lower than South Australia. It's to find that low population density, you need to go out to outback Australia and the like. And that certainly has an implication to what services we can offer and how much it costs to offer those services. So what services are offered? Snowy Monaro has its curbside collection, which if you live in town, you should be aware of. It's a red bin, a yellow bin, and if you're in Cooma, there's a green bin. And the green bin takes garden waste and food waste. You'd see public place bins in parks and the like. And then there's a range of transfer stations to which you can self-haul various materials, and community recycling centres at 2 of those transfer stations where you can take specialist materials like paint and e-waste, things like that. Drum muster for farm chemicals, and then the council holds events like the chemical clean out day, the garage sale trail, and do waste services at community events. The council also has a rangers and a public health unit that try and prevent dumping, and when dumping does happen, cleans up the waste from dumping. Now, if you don't live in one of the towns, then you may have access to a bank bin service or an alternative form of waste service, which makes sense in a dispersed community like this. And so there's a picture there of one of the bank bin services. The council also does waste education so that people understand how to use the waste services that they've got. So there's a schools program. There's the website where you can find a lot of information. You may get an annual resource waste collection calendar delivered through the post, pop-up education services and community issues. And in the pictures here, you can see a new education campaign the council's been running around hazardous waste with Hazardous Harry. And then the council does internal training of staff so that they understand how the system works and can help feed that back to you guys when you ring in or in contact with them. And so you've got a picture here of one of the waste trucks dropping off waste at a landfill beside a transfer station, and you can see a bunch of staff there on a facility tour. So this map is very fine detail, but you can find it up on the web. It shows the Shire of Snowy Monaro and the services spread out around there. So the banks of bins, the transfer stations and the landfills, the community recycling centres, there's 2 of those, one at Jindabyne and Cooma, the composting facility at Cooma, and the scrap mart or tip shops where you can take your bulky waste like lounges, old push bikes, etc., and they can resell them to the community. And then apart from the government, there are private sector facilities. You've got the return and earn and a range of other businesses providing waste services in this area. So fees and charges, it's something close to everyone's heart. Snowy Monaro has a range of fees and charges you might see on your rates notice. Even if you don't have a curbside service, there's a standard fee of some $121 a year, and that's to make sure the landfills are built and that the rangers can pick up waste and services that we all use, even if we use them indirectly. And there's a picture there of the Cooma facility, and as you can see, it's a large, sprawling facility, providing a heap of services to the community and businesses. If you do get a curbside service, then there's a domestic recycling service and a waste service. Pardon me. And if you're in Cooma, there's a domestic food and garden organic collection. And for rural people who have access to banker bins, then there's a charge associated with accessing those banker bins. How does that compare to the rest of New South Wales? The average fee in New South Wales for waste is $389, so ballpark, a little bit less, but in light of the economies of scale in other local government regions in New South Wales, not a lot less. And you can see the lowest fee is something like $132 out in the Riverina, right up to $700 in some of Sydney's inner city suburbs. $710 happens to be Strathfield. If you want to know all the fees and charges, they're on the web. You can go to the Snowy Monaro website, or you can simply Google it. And I've got a couple of links there where you can see the fees and charges for specific things. And there's a whole range of things you can drop off for free as well. So how are we doing? What's the performance? On the good side, you guys don't produce a lot of waste. You've done a good job of not unnecessarily consuming things. And so you're presenting significantly less waste in your household bins than the typical person in New South Wales. On the not as good side, the recycling level is at the lower end of the spectrum, 42%, and that compares to an average in New South Wales of 65% and a target of 75%. But we can see that for the areas that have the third bin for food and garden organics, that comes up to 56%, which is pretty good, and indeed is better than most of the regional areas in New South Wales. So that's certainly one of the things we're looking at with this strategy is expanding that third bin service. So improving performance, I've already mentioned, third bin service will certainly help. And then we need to get better at making sure we put recyclables in the yellow bin and that we don't put rubbish like plastic bags into the yellow bin. So we need to pull a bit out of the yellow bin, the rubbish, and put it in the red bin and make sure that when we have recyclables, they go into the yellow bin. So that's an education effort. And then when we get a food and garden organic system, it's being mindful and trying to make sure that all your food waste, as well as your garden waste, ends up in that green bin so that we can turn it into compost. But it's certainly not just about households. It's the commercial sector. Again, educating them. And as we roll out the third bin system, we can start collecting organics from businesses. And that's particularly important for restaurants, businesses like that make a lot of food waste. And there's a potential for beverage container capture for the return and earn scheme. And I said how valuable that can potentially be. So that's particularly pubs and clubs, sporting organisations that generate a lot of beverage containers and making sure they don't turn up in the red bin. And then for building sites, trying to get better on-site sorting, and then looking for ways to use the concrete waste and bricks and the like in construction projects, so that again they don't go into landfill and we can get a beneficial use of that material. And that may need more infrastructure, like a sorting facility for construction and demolition waste. And again, with Cooma and Snowy Monaro being a relatively small area and dispersed, we're probably talking about having a mobile facility on the back of a truck that can go around to different towns in the region and work with them to do that recycling. So we're trying to get the community's feel for how they think this waste system is going and what they'd like to see. And so the council conducted a survey between the 20th of Feb and the 25th of March and got pretty good feedback. 258 people isn't a bad turnout at all. And so this is a summary of what those people said back to us. There was a general feeling that the waste facilities weren't being used because fees and charges were too high, quite a common complaint, and that the people found it difficult to access the facilities, and that there wasn't enough information on what they could recycle or where it had to be taken. Around half of the people who responded said they wouldn't pay more even if it improved recycling, or wouldn't want to pay more. And around half didn't believe that the yellow bin material was being recycled, which I can assure you it is. It's taken down to Canberra to the Hugh Murph, and I think it's got about 85–90% of that is recovered. Certainly all the paper and glass, aluminium and steel. And we talked a bit earlier about contamination, so there is some material that turns up in the yellow bin that doesn't get recovered. And what did you want to see? What did you want to have improved? People were pretty keen to get a third bin for green waste, and they were very keen on a bulky waste collection service. So people said if they got a food and organic service, that they would use it for food and they would use it for garden waste. And when they said they wanted more information, the way they thought it was best to get information was either via Facebook or letterbox drops. And particularly they wanted to know what could be recycled and what services and facilities were available. And again, probably not unsurprisingly, not only did people want a bulky waste service, but the people who wanted that service felt that if we had one, there would be less illegal dumping. So as a part of the strategy development, we're looking at a number of new infrastructure initiatives. That includes new landfill cells. So to keep the landfills going, every 5 or so years, we need a new cell. And we're looking at that in Jindabyne and Cooma. And then we're looking to upgrade transfer stations to freight waste more effectively. And we're looking at that for Jindabyne, Bombala and Delegate. And then we are considering whether it makes more sense to close the Bombala landfill, just keep it as an emergency reserve, and then freight the waste from Bombala over to Cooma to landfill it. There's also some work to be done around improving stormwater management and leachate management at those landfills. And then there are some 14 old landfills around Snowy Monaro. And so there's investigations going on around which of those need remediation and which of those could be upgraded to provide emergency landfill capacity for future issues that might occur. We're looking at fire responses, which is particularly an issue with landfills and the emergence of rechargeable batteries. And rechargeable batteries are supposed to be taken to CRCs to be recycled, but they often end up in the bins. And when they get crushed, they can start fires. So we need to be able to put those fires out at landfills. And with the rollout of the third bin potentially to the rest of Snowy Monaro, we're going to have a lot more green waste to compost. So we're looking to expand the composting facility at Cooma. And then there's just that ongoing replacement of trucks and getting best practice collection trucks for worker safety. And of course to have them less noisy and more fuel efficient, less smelly, etc. So we're considering a range of services and other initiatives, and these are very much proposals. They're not set in stone yet. One of those is a community recycling centre that's mobile. It's a trailer. So that means that all the towns could have at least some of the year access to a place where you can take your paint and take your batteries and take some of those specialist waste, your e-waste. So that initiative will happen. That one is actually committed to. And then expanding the business waste collection services and particularly trying to capture some of those commercial organics. And I touched on that earlier. And so that happens in conjunction with the third bin rollout. And indeed those curbside collection services are likely to be extended to more rural properties. And we're looking to do more of the banker bins, which seem to work really well in this area. One of the target towns for that is Micalago. Business education. I touched on earlier about how the container deposit scheme greatly increases the value of containers. So just making businesses aware of that and helping them capture those materials so that money, that 10 cents per container, is kept in the community. And also for builders, because building waste is in the order of a third of what goes to landfill, and there's some really easy gains that can be made there if we focus on that. We're trying to do the costing around bulky waste collection. So that's where you can put your lounge. Traditionally, you'd put it out on the curb, be collected once a year, and so we're trying to cost that and understand the waste implications, because it's quite expensive and it does have legal risk implications in this age of people suing each other. And we're also looking at other ways of doing that, like in the ACT, where they come out and collect it from your place on an on-call basis. And if you're a pensioner or a concession card holder, you get that service for free once or twice a year, whereas other people actually pay a small fee for it. So yeah, we're looking at some of those options and trying to cost them. And of course, that comes down to that question of, what are people willing to pay for more service? And remember, our initial feedback was at least half of people don't want to pay any more at all. In terms of the circular economy and that broader sense of how sustainable we can be, we're looking at the procurement policy and making sure the council buys as much recyclable material and local material as it can. Looking at food rescue, where you work with supermarkets and bakeries and businesses producing food and capture it just before it's past its due by date, and then work with charities to make meals and to move that to needy people in the community. So that's one of those sort of win-wins, social, economic and environmental wins. I've already touched on trying to get those containers to keep that money in the community, with sporting communities and the like, and people who generate a lot of beer bottles and the like. And then local sorting of recyclables, because we'll need that if we're to pull the cans out of the existing yellow top bins. And back of the envelope from audits already done by the council and from data we've got suggests there's $500,000 a year worth of cans sitting in our yellow top bins going down to the Canberra recycling, and we could potentially save the transport costs and keep a fair bit of that locally. And part of how we could keep it locally is taking glass and making a sand product or a gravel product out of it, and potentially using tyres or mixed plastics into asphalt in road construction. So things like that, keeping products local, keeping trucks off the road, and reducing costs. So timelines, we're basically finished costing the options now, and so there's internal consultation to go around the costing on that, and then council consultation. Public consultation's been going on. This presentation here is a part of that, and so was the survey. And the draft strategy will go to council reasonably soon, this winter, and then there'll be a chance for the public to comment on that. And then the council will be looking to finalise their new strategy in the spring of this year, and then over the next 10 years be implementing those changes. And these timelines are subject to the COVID health crisis. We're hoping that we're seeing the end of it now, but that's far from certain. And certainly there's been changes and delays due to that, including the fact that you are seeing this presentation as a recording on Snowy Monaro's website, when these were going to be a series of face-to-face community meetings. So we want to get your feedback all the time, but now is a great time to make your voice heard while we're trying to finalise these ideas and nail things down. So yeah, that's the best time for us to hear your thoughts. So I'd like to point you to the website, and there's social media platforms that you can reach the council by. Of course, you can email them, and we'll endeavour to respond to your comments as soon as possible. So thanks very much for listening, and I hope you found this informative and that you can take part in having a sustainable waste system in the great region of Snowy Monaro.